Welcome, mothers and others. Today, we're so excited to bring to you some three really great House District candidates. First, we have Mike Creedon from House District 24, Madeline Eden from House District 17, and Kat Marvel from House District 129. Welcome, Mike, Madeline, and Kat. We are so glad you're here. So what we're going to do to get started is if I'm going to give each of you all like 2 to 3 minutes just to talk to us about who you are and why you're running for Texas House. And we'll go right ahead and we'll start with Mike.
Hey, thanks. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak in front of you. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. My name is Michael Creedon. I'm a resident, or have been a resident of Texas for over 20 years. Married, I have 3 boys. I'm a retired ExxonMobil executive, and I'm a colonel in the United States Army Reserve, and recently just got back from some different type of border duty in Korea. January 6th was a big deal to me, and what happened in Washington was a big deal to me. And I looked at it through the lens of a private citizen and was appalled at how our nation got to the point where we were tearing each other apart. And I thought I could run a campaign, and I thought I could come up with a platform that could possibly bring these two parties together. And certainly we need that more than ever in the state of Texas. And so I came up with a grassroots campaign to try to find that middle ground again. And the majority of my campaign is based on those, what they call kitchen table type of issues, the bread and butter issues, whether it's inflation relief or lower taxes or having our grid be reliable, flood control, high quality public education, jobs, Medicare, Medicaid expansion, common sense gun reduction measures. And I'm sure throughout the next hour, I'll be able to, talk about a lot more of them in detail. And so my district is in Galveston County. North Galveston County represents about 56% of it. My opponent has been in the position for well over 12 years and happens to be head of the appropriations chair. So many of the issues that the middle is losing out are directly related to his platform and his hold within Austin. And that naturally segues into Governor Abbott as well. The legislation and the governor's office seem to be in tandem right now. It just doesn't seem to be going in the direction that I think we should be going. And certainly I don't think it's the direction that the majority of the constituents of the great District of 24 believe as well. So looking forward to this evening, and thank you for the opportunity to get to know your audience, as well as hopefully that they get to know me and my platform a bit better.
Great. Welcome. I've been hearing a lot about you from my friends in Galveston County. So I'm really excited that you're here. So Madeline Eden, tell us a little bit about you and your campaign, even though I feel like I know you very personally now. But if you can just tell us a little bit about you and your campaign and just why you decided to run for office.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. You can hear me all right? We're doing campaign stuff today. My name is Madeline Eden. I'm running in District 17, which is 5 counties that are just east of Austin and Travis. That's Bastrop, Caldwell, Lee, Milam, and Burleson counties. I have been organizing out here in these counties now for many years. The last 2 years have spent working on vaccine initiatives and pandemic response initiatives for a lot of the communities out here east of Austin. Before that, I founded a couple of organizations, one called registertovote.org and one called Civitech, and built out a lot of civic engagement technology and voter registration tools and systems. I definitely feel like I've gotten to know Nancy pretty well over the last couple of weeks. But the reason that I decided to run out here initially was, had a lot to do with 2016 and fixing some of the problems that we have here in Texas. I really wanted a new governor. I've wanted a new senator. I wanted a new governor. I wanted, a new state. And so, I've basically spent a lot of time building up a grassroots campaign. We have a ton of support out here, and we have a whole lot of people who really want to make a difference in the state. And I think that's what's important in 2022. Is anybody that is able to step up and help make a difference needs to be doing that, and that's about what my campaign is doing right now. And we've put a lot of effort into recruiting down ballot candidates. We've put a lot of effort into helping coordinated campaigns with the congressional candidates that are in the area, as well as the statewide candidates. And we've spent a whole lot of time and effort helping get our next governor of Texas elected. And so, I think this district that I'm in is a competitive district, especially with the fact that it's a two-way race, which is kind of a different thing for a state house race. And I haven't, in my experience, I haven't seen that happen where there's an independent third party necessarily running in a state house race. I've seen libertarians, but I haven't seen a lot of independents. And so it's kind of an interesting opportunity to gather new data as well. And so, it's going to be a mad dash for the next 64 days until November. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about the other state house candidates and working with the Mothers Against Greg Abbott organization moving forward into November. And thank you again for having me on here.
Yes. Thank you so much, Madeline. I really appreciate that fact that you're here and that you're running. And I am a big fan of all of your work that you did during COVID. So thank you so much for that work as well. All right. Kat Marvel, you're up next. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your campaign and why you're running?
Sure thing. I feel a little bit like an imposter after Madeline all stuff does, but I'm just running because the guy who's currently in there, who's been my representative in District 129, he makes decisions that I just cannot stand behind. I've lived in Texas for 7 years now. I have met some of the kindest, smartest, most friendly people I've ever met here. And then we have state reps who are making a lot of decisions that are great for business and great for rich people. And the rest of us are kind of left picking up the pieces, shivering in our frozen houses and looking around at food deserts and looking at insane housing prices where 28% of all the houses that were bought last year were bought by corporations. And food and housing and education are the most basic needs that a government should be assisting, providing, supporting for its people, and we're not. We're just plain not. So my entire platform is based around those basic needs that are just not being cared for by the current incumbent. So for myself, I'm a substitute teacher with Clear Creek ISD, and then on weekends I'm a realtor. So education and housing are, those are pretty important subjects for me, professionally speaking, and it shapes a lot of what I see and how I interact with people. So I'm just doing my best, standing on my box and pointing out what it is we really probably ought to be doing with our time and our money in order to actually help the people that we are purported to be representing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kat. I'm so glad you're running and I'm so glad you're here. So,
Thanks.
You just mentioned education. Let's just go ahead and just start off with education. Education right now in Texas is a red hot mess, right? I mean, we can all sort of agree on that. Especially where Kat lives. It's kind of definitely a red hot mess where Kat lives. I'm not too sure about Michael, what it's like for you in your part of Houston, in the Houston Galveston County area, but yeah, it definitely seems like the critical race theory and the book banning folks are hitting all different types of suburban communities across Texas right now. They seem to be the hot thing. So I wanted to ask you all what your positions are on education and what your positions are and what you are hearing from parents, like as you go canvassing and as you just knock on doors. What are you hearing from parents? So we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Look, public education, I'm a product of public education. My wife is a school teacher. I come from a family where with the exception of my father, my other 6 uncles and aunts were all ultimately became principals and superintendents of schools. And I've got a bazillion cousins that are in the education field. So education is kind of core to me. And I actually spent some time as a professor as well. Quality public education is a cornerstone of society. It's a cornerstone of our communities, and without it, we don't create the next generation of great minds. We don't create the next generation of policemen and firemen and teachers and civil servants and just people that go out there and do the very best they can to make a living and provide for their families. And it's essential. And although I don't think education is as bad in my district as slightly north. I did run for school board about 1.5 years ago, a nonpartisan race, wink, wink, nod, nod, sure it is. And it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. The issues were book banning and critical race theory. And they weren't about what was most important, which is getting fiscally responsible schools that have local control by their boards that are empowered to provide the children the necessary education and tools to be successful in whatever endeavor they choose, whether it's Harvard or whether it's art. It doesn't matter. Whatever endeavor they choose, they should be successful. And having teachers who are properly compensated, cared for, including with medical and retirement benefits, because they devote their lives, they devote the treasure, they devote their time to shaping these children. And yet, at the end of the day, they can be left with a pension that doesn't have cost of living adjustments for their sacrifices, while others are making a mint on Wall Street. It's a big problem, and I think social media has done a great disservice to us by distorting what the real views and the real issues are. Instead, we're talking about nothing short of nonsense issues. If critical race theory was ever being taught in Clear Creek Independent School District, I have not heard of it. I don't know of it. In fact, when it was introduced to me, I had to figure out what it was in the first place, never mind whether it was an issue. So unfortunately, though, a lot of people, to answer your other question about what do I hear in door knocking, they believe it. They believe it's real. It's a threat to society. And it's a real, very real issue to them. And trying to talk them off the ledge is not easy. And there's a lot of them out there. I do my very best. The people around me do our very best to try to introduce, what we consider to be the facts and the truth into a discussion. Sometimes we're successful, but I regret to inform you that many times we're not. And we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I just wish I had the most perfect solution that would fit, right, for everybody. But it's really hard. It's really hard when they will just believe lies versus the truth. So I hear you there. All right, Madeline, what is your position on education?
Well, I guess it's somewhat unique. I have two that are still in high school, public high school, one freshman, one senior. I have 2 other boys that graduated, both from public school. I talk with a lot of teachers in a lot of different school districts. Just the county I live in has 4 school districts, and we worked with them extensively to do vaccinations. We partnered with them extensively throughout the course of the pandemic to do deployment for testing and deployment for vaccines. And, and we are not in the state of Texas, we are not setting our teachers and our schools up to be successful. We have one school district in House District 17 that actually had to pay back to the state because they had billed out too much on property taxes. School district, and we're not talking about like a well-funded school district here. We're talking about a rural school district, and the fact that they're having to kick money back to the state while they still don't even have a full slate of teachers to start the year is I mean, it's tragic, and it's there. Right now our state is doing a disservice to the educational sector, and we are one of the most undereducated states in the union, and when you consider that we are the second most populous state in the country, that equates to a pretty big deal. And so we have to do a lot more, especially in terms of securing our campuses and making sure that our teachers are safe, and doing so by I hate to go straight into a more controversial subject, but raising the assault weapons age to purse to 21, and semi-automatic weapons the same thing. There are so many things that we need to do in order to upgrade our campuses to keep our children safe. The very first week of school in my district, my son's high school campus was locked down, and it's just like, as a parent, like, we don't want to live this way. And as teachers, they don't want to work that way. And that's why we have such a high level of job dissatisfaction with the teachers in Texas. And so, we are going to have to make some real changes, especially on the state legislative level, in order to support our schools and to support our school districts and to support our teachers moving forward, or we're going to have much bigger problems in another decade than we have right now. And so, things like voucher programs for private schools and things like critical race theory and these are things that, like Mike said, these folks believe this stuff, and the disinformation and the tactics to disseminate disinformation and propaganda are very strong. And so I think it's up to everybody to really make an effort to kind of bring people into the know, right? I mean, we have some really good candidates for State Board of Education this year as well, across the board. And we need to make sure that we have them reelected, because a lot of them are at a significant disadvantage due to redistricting. But yeah, in terms of where my campaign stance is on education, we are fully supportive of, the public education and of the teachers and students across the state. So,
Okay.
I will pass it off to Kat.
Thank you. So before Kat starts, I need to point out that one of those the State School Board of Education candidates is Dan Hochman, and he is in Michael Creedon's district, and we got to help this guy. I know that I've seen pictures of Michael and Dan together at an event or two recently, because I follow you all on all the things. So I remember seeing a picture. So, but this is one candidate that we have to elect, because the person he's running it up against is a crazy Mom for Liberty's wacko job. So we really have to do our part there for sure. All right, Kat, you're up next. What is your position on education?
Go education. So the stats around Texas education are deeply depressing. We spend less than 38 other states per student. We are 42nd on the Chance for Success Index. We're not doing great. And it's difficult to not consider that the Republican Party is fully aware that the more educated a person is, the more likely they are to lean left. And so it behooves them to make sure that their constituents are as uneducated as possible, because they are more likely to vote Republican the less educated they are. And that seems incredibly harmful and selfish, to realize that there's no way that that is not a consideration. So for us, what we need to be doing is, of course, just funding education. This state brings in billions and billions and billions of dollars from oil and gas. We are an incredibly rich state, and that money is not going to make smarter, more educated citizens, which is it's wasteful, and it's a little embarrassing that we just aren't investing in the kids who are, they're the people who are entering the workforce. They're the people that are making the decisions in the next 20 years. Like, if we don't educate folks, if we don't train them up, then our state just gets dumber and makes worse decisions. It's not a good trajectory. So what I would really love to see is just plain and simple more funding. And then, of course, we have the whole safety issue. The thing that I keep seeing in my CCISD parents group on Facebook is we are genuinely afraid that our children are going to die in school because somebody's going to bring a gun in and shoot them. And that's horrifying. It was something that wasn't even on the radar 20 years ago when I was in high school. It's just the idea that this is forefront of parents' minds. So sad. So we can't keep doing what we've been doing for gun safety because what we've been doing is not working. So instead of being told, well, we can't try all of these things because we assume they won't work. Well, we already know that what we're doing now is not working. So we have to do new things, period. We need stricter gun control. We just do, because it's more important that we protect our children than that we protect guns.
Yeah, that is very true. Thank you so much. So with that, I'm going to let Michael. We, both Madeline and Kat talked about guns. So I know that you were in the military, correct? I think I saw that on your website when I did a little bit of research on you. So let's have a little bit of a different conversation about guns, your position on guns and the Second Amendment and their purpose. Wanted to see what you had to add to the conversation that we were having about guns and, guns in schools. And then to add a couple things that I actually went out to Uvalde today. So it was pretty intense to go out there and meet with some of the families and just see Uvalde and be on the ground and just see how the families are doing today, which has been a very tender day for them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Yeah, no, I'm actually still in the military. So guns are a tool for me. No more than a hammer or any other thing a carpenter would use. A gun is a tool for it's an instrument of warfare. And that's how I've treated it. That's how I've treated it my entire life. I also happen to be a Moms Demand Action in Every Town gun sense candidate with distinction. So if you're familiar with their platform, I support it in its entirety. Assault weapons. I own an assault weapon. I own an assault weapon because in 2006, I got tapped out and got told I was going to go overseas into combat. And I wasn't really good at firing an assault weapon. So I got one and I got good at it because, well, quite honestly, it was required for me to come back alive. So that is one of those reasons where I think, yeah, there's a place for assault weapons in this world, but we've lost. I'm not a big fan of high schoolers being able to access it. They're just not mature enough to be able to handle it. I'm not a big fan of the ability to circumvent background checks for getting weapons of mass destruction like that. I think we can do a lot more to tighten that up. I also am a supporter of mental health funding as well, because that is part of it, unfortunately. It's also a big issue in the veterans community. Suicide is tremendously high in the veterans community, disproportionate to the rest of society. And a lot of those suicides are done with guns. As it relates to school tragedies and shootings, which breaks my heart every time I read them here and think about them, I don't think arming more good guys with guns is the solution. You can put more guns in society, but if people are not trained, or if they have the will to be able to pull the trigger, you're on a fool's errand. It's not going to achieve your objectives. And I have watched people that have been trained for many years, when the moment came to pull the trigger, they were just incapable. And that is not, the line of defense I would like to see for our children. Arming of teachers, I've been on record for this for a long time. It's just a non-starter for me. Teachers teach. If they wanted to be police officers, they should have chosen to be a police officer. There just has to be a better way to protect our schools than just arming teachers. Gun violence, the reduction of gun violence is an incredibly complex topic. And in and of itself, I would have thought that would have justified a special state session. We certainly had some sessions last year that addressed really critical issues, right? No, they didn't. But this year could have been. And yet we not. And for reasons that I guess the politicians in Austin will have to live with. But I think it would have justified it, and I think there's more action. What happened in the Senate and in the U.S. Congress was a start. It was clearly a compromise, but it falls way short of what's necessary to really protect our kids and really protect us all from gun violence.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. So I'm going to ask each of you all a personal question, and then we'll go back to a group question. So we'll start out with Maddie. Your district has a high poverty rate. Approximately 13.9% of your constituents live in a poverty level, according to the state's House District 17 profile. How has this been addressed by your House District representative in the past, and what do you plan to do if you're elected to help these families?
That is a really cool question, actually. I don't know that my House representative has done a whole lot, which, I mean, in terms of the poverty rate in our district. And that's probably part of the reason maybe that he resigned last year. So, or he didn't resign, but he will not be seeking re-election and effectively left the seat open. One of the things that I really firmly believe in is kind of called, I guess, termed leading from the outside. And so as a data scientist and software engineer, I've done a lot of work with local groups, especially in Bastrop County, building out different forms of dashboards, specifically having to do with the economic wellness of the county and finding out which areas specifically we need to be doing the work in. Because honestly, I think that number that you just stated is probably low for my district. There are, the biggest part of the problem in Texas is we don't know what we don't know, especially when it comes to stuff like that. And in a lot of cases that they treat it kind of like Trump treated, COVID testing. Like if we're not testing for it, then it doesn't exist. Right. And so, and in this case, I think there are a lot of different opportunities in terms of like workforce development opportunities that can be, instituted in a lot of the smaller municipalities out here in the rural areas east of Austin. And I think that a big part of what I would like to do in the legislature is improve the way that we are gathering data and reporting it so that we can, better identify where those opportunities, are, and also more importantly, where we need to do the most work. Because in terms of like equitable opportunities. That's not really a term that they use in Texas. Right? I mean, people understand what equity means, but I think in a lot of cases they don't understand how to implement it that way. And so, I think what I would like to see happen is better data used by the state legislature to really target in a much more precise manner, a lot where we need to be deploying these resources to basically improve the economic and financial well-being of a lot of these families that live in these areas.
I understand. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks so much. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. So Kat, you are up next. And my question to you is this. So Kat, you also work with the Bay Area Democrats and state on your site that you have knowledge of what people are fighting for and what they expect out of their candidates. So have you seen an uptick in the number of Republicans that are seeking better representation in your district? And if so, how do you address their issues and concerns?
I haven't. I'm trying to think here. No, I take it back. I have run into a couple of Republicans that have started showing up to my my little meet and greet sessions, and they honestly just kind of seem to feel like their party has gone off the rails. They veer right so far that they're not even in political territory anymore. They're working on ideology that's getting scary for some of them. And so they've kind of headed on back toward the middle. And oddly, I'm a lot closer to the middle than some of the Republican candidates out there. So so far what they have told me that they are looking for is mostly just very common sense stuff. They want to see small businesses being supported again. They want to see reasonable tax rates. They want government that appears to actually be functioning on behalf of its constituents. And all of these are things that I 100% agree with. When we have a budget, it should be clear and it should be transparent. Everybody should be able to see what a budget is and what it gets spent on. Just doing the work of actually serving people is the whole point of government. So I don't find myself really having any particular debates with the Republicans show up because the things I'm talking about are things that obviously benefit everybody. I want better education. I want affordable housing. I want everybody to be able to walk in, and if they are able to legally vote, be able to legally vote. I want our healthcare to be funded because the American healthcare system is garbage. So if we can take care of those basic needs, everybody's.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Michael, I have a question for you. So Greg Bonin supports major current Republican ideologies. He is anti-abortion. He believes in a heightened border security and is backed by the NRA. How have these values affected your communities? And what have you heard from your constituents in House District 24 as far as like their demands and what their state representative, Greg Bonner, lacks?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the district I'm in is, depending on which poll you want to go with, was 65 to 70% Trump. So it's redder than red. And so he's got the social message locked down on the issues that you have just, that you just articulated. I do sense, though, that there's a growing frustration amongst particularly Republicans and the moderate Republicans that what government should be doing and what the party in power is doing are starting to diverge. So we are not getting satisfaction. And I think these are the kitchen table issues that even, I won't say the far right will agree on, but certainly the middle right agrees on that. Our infrastructure is not healthy. Our grid is not healthy. Our flood control is a wing and a prayer. The towns are doing their very best with the resources that they have. But there's no really state concerted effort to help them with flood control. And we go underwater down here, which is bad. And so those types of issues are not being worked. Inflation and high taxes is bludgeoning District 24. And that's completely within the power of government to do something about. I mean, I think Kat mentioned earlier, the oil and severance gas tax is going to go through the roof this year with over $100 a barrel. So we're going to have a windfall on the state revenue that we haven't seen in decades. And what are we going to do with that windfall? Well, it's, the money came from people. So you would like to think that some of it should go back to the people. So things like a reduction in sales tax and helping our school districts with school funding as opposed to decreasing it, holding their own or increasing it. These are all issues that are just starting to wake up the folks of District 24. Roe v. Wade being overturned, another issue that has started to wake up the moderate population in District 24, where rights are being taken away. This is one of the first generations in a long time where rights are being taken away. They're not being expanded, they're actually being taken away. And that is starting to get noticed. I can tell that the middle is prevailing because this is the first year in memory that my opponent has actually taken the time to put signs up and do some form of campaigning. So there's a tide out there where the government has somewhat lost its way in serving the basic needs of its constituents in District 24. And I think it's an opportunity for someone like myself to come in there and hopefully show the district what proper representation is really about.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just to let anybody who's watching us right now on Facebook Live, just to let you all know that there is this thing called the Permanent Education Fund, and it is underneath the Texas General Land Commissioner. So it would be underneath Jay Clayburgh if he wins. And right now, when they're talking about the windfall that the oil and gas have brought in, a lot of the taxes and things that a lot of the money collected is from this oil and gas industry, and it goes into the Permanent Education School Fund. So we want to know what Greg Abbott and party or what they plan to do with this money next year, because in years past, they haven't allocated enough money to fund teachers and education. And originally, this fund was supposed to pay for all of the teacher supplies. So when you think about it, as a parent, we pay for school supplies for the teacher. Well, in the original plan, that's what this fund was for. So we didn't have to pay for that sort of stuff, but we have to supplement now because the state of Texas is just cutting back and paying less and less and less. So that's definitely an education issue and how it affects all of us. So I just thought I would just let anybody who's watching this just get that little bit of knowledge that maybe you all didn't know before. So let's move on to the next question. And actually, we'll just touch up on this because, Michael, you talked about women's rights, but let's go right ahead and talk to Kat and Madeline about women's rights to choose. And then after we're done with that, we will ask each of you all what we could do to help you all with your campaign. Okay, so let's go right ahead. We'll start with Kat. What is your position on women's rights and a lot of things that are going on right now with the 14th Amendment?
I am incensed that I have lost the right to control my own uterus. We kind of knew it was coming, but even though we knew it was coming the day it happened. I don't often cry over policy. I was mad enough that I cried, because we are now at the point where women in Texas have less control over their bodies than people who have passed away. Dead people have more control over their internal organs and what happens to them than living women. And that's the long and the short of it. Whether you believe life starts at conception or life starts at first breath is immaterial. When you have to use another human being's body to keep someone else alive, it is illegal. It is illegal. Forcing a woman to carry a fetus to term against her will is a human rights violation in the rest of the world. And we're doing that here. We are scaring healthcare professionals into not being able to provide necessary, needed life-saving procedures because it might have some sort of danger to a fetus. And so women are dying. Women are already dying. Children are dying. Anybody with a uterus is in immediate danger because we've lost the right to our own internal organs. We've lost the right to our own bodies. And whether or not our bodies are used to support the life of another person. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
No. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you
All right.
so much. All right, Madeline, it is your turn.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so a woman's right to choose should be protected, constitutionally. And I think one of the biggest issues that we as a country have had over the last years is, we have basically become too reliant on the judicial system to protect us instead of codifying, these rights into law or a constitutional format. But by relying on a judicial system to effectively, create and protect, a woman's right to choose, rights to, not just that, but rights to, same-sex marriage. There are a ton of things that are protected right now by the Supreme Court's rulings. And so that scares the hell out of me, right? As somebody, when they eradicated Roe v. Wade, they basically brought all of that to the forefront and put everything else on the line. So this election is not just like one of the most important of our lives. I mean, it is, and everybody says this every time. At this time, I mean, I think it pretty much is there. This decision by the state of Texas to implement that trigger ban, to pass the heartbeat bill that they passed previously, this is going to cost lives in Texas, right? And that is the cold truth of it, and it is tragic, and the fact that the majority of our legislature that passed these laws are white men, okay, and they really have no business making decisions about healthcare. And abortion is healthcare, period, paragraph, end of story. It is a decision and a discussion that happens between a woman and her healthcare provider, right? And our legislature honestly has no business in the middle of that discussion in any way, shape, or form. Just like they don't have any place deciding who we love or who we marry or, so many other things that they are right in the middle of. And these folks who believe in small government and that they don't want the government interfering in their lives seem to really have a lot of problems keeping themselves out of other people's lives. But that being said, I will say that, there's some interesting data so far this year. in that regard. I think that Kansas and their referendum, against abortion bans was pretty solid. I think that the fact that something like 70% of newly registered voters this year are women says a lot about, how much attention people are paying to this issue now, because it is a very vocal minority that brought this about. And honestly, we need to do everything we can to restore these rights, fight them so that cannot be taken away again in the future. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So for your all's final question, I'd like for each of you all to go one at a time and tell us how we can support you, where we can find you, and what help do you need right now in your campaign. So we'll start with Michael.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to share my views and be able to speak today. You can find me on creedonfortexas.com, creedonfortexas.com, and then at Creedon for Texas on all the social media, handles, whether that's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. My needs are just visibility of my campaign. And to the extent that MAGA's got volunteers that can help phone bank and block walk on behalf of the slate, I would be incredibly valuable to me. I'm not, I'll never turn down money, but that's not where I'm built, is looking for money. I'm looking for getting people who might otherwise not be inclined to get out for a midterm election to get out and vote, and hopefully spend the time to be educated on the issues and make an informed decision about how they want their state government to be run. I can't help but to pile on a little bit on what Madeline was saying. The feds threw this to the states, and I said it's a state issue on abortion. Sort through it, states. That makes 4 entities in Texas the most powerful and influential on this matter. That's the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Senate, and the 3 people that you're interviewing today. So all of a sudden, the House has become extremely important in shaping what the future of women's rights will be in the state of Texas. So that isn't enough to get people up and out and to the ballot. I'm not sure what will. And to the extent that your organization can help motivate people to express their views by voting, I think is naturally going to be very helpful to my campaign. And I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you. So you all heard him. He needs some help on the ground, and we definitely have chapters forming across the state of Texas, and definitely a chapter that is Heidi Gordon is heading up one of the chapters that's close to you, and you probably know her. So we gotta get people working for you on the ground. And then if anyone is listening to this webinar right now, and if you happen to live in New York City or Chicago or Washington, D.C., and if you hate Greg Abbott as much as we do, we really want to welcome your help and come and help us on texting campaigns, because we're going to need the entire nation to help us get out the vote. And that is just the God honest truth. So thanks so much, Michael. And we're going to do our best by you. And I have another announcement coming up after we're done with the 3 of you. So Kat, you are up next. Tell us where we can find you and what help you need on your campaign.
Okie dokie. So my campaign website is catmarble.com. So I'm pretty easy to find. What I want is for everybody to hound your friends, hound your family, get real aggressive about it. Make sure they are registered to vote. Make sure they go onto the internet and they check and make sure that their registration is still good. We are still dealing with Republicans culling the registration rolls of as many Democrats as they can get away with. So make sure that your registration is still valid, and that your friend's registration is still valid, and then go vote. Make them go. drag them to the poll. Just get in there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And then we'll get together and do a reach out about how we can help you on the ground as well. So I'll be having our chapter leaders get a hold of you really soon. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Madeline, you are up next.
You can find my website. I was kind of giggling when Michael said the name of his website, thinking, oh, my website's Eden for Texas. So, I'm a part of it, EDENFORTEXAS.com. And same thing on Facebook, same thing on Twitter, same thing on Instagram. I may even be on TikTok. I'm not sure. Somebody set it up for me. The things that my campaign really could use help with, of course, there's phone banking would be great, and boots on the ground in the areas that that are walkable would be wonderful. Also, postcard writing or letter writing would also be really, really valuable. Phone banking and door knocking is super helpful. And then there's also money, which is always a very useful commodity to have during an election. And a lot of people, they don't necessarily consider the fact that when they're donating money, they're like to the Texas Democratic Party or to Beto or to, statewide candidates that down ballot candidates don't see any of that. People running, for your boards and for your county and for your justices of peace and your state house candidates. They don't share that money with us. And so, we do also, there are a lot of expenses. And so, if nothing else, figure out, pull down a copy of your ballot, figure out who you got to vote for, and then go and research your candidates. You're really helpful, in terms of what people could do. But otherwise, I think, any amount of volunteer power that Mothers Against Greg Abbott can afford, state house candidates would truly be very much appreciated. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Nancy. Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We need to get all of our chapters working on the ground and supporting the statewide candidates. So thank you, all three of you, Michael, Kat, and Madeline, for joining us today. I really appreciate you all running for office. For the sacrifice that you all have made for time away from your family and for giving yourself to the state of Texas during this time. It's so important to thank all of you and your families. So I can't thank you enough. And thanks for joining me today on the webinar, and we will see you all on the campaign trail.